Scott T. Smith is a singer-songwriter with boundless vocals accompanied by his rootsy acoustic guitar. His songs set the stage for cinematic reflections that perfectly complement a heartland road trip. Growing up in Hurricane, West Virginia, he made the move to Louisville to further his musical inspiration and develop as an artist. He's released the EP Wanted Man and appears on the Lift Up Louisville single that features over 20 artists with ties to the Louisville music scene. Yeah, so how do you approach songwriting?
For me, I'm realizing that it's directly correlated to my day-to-day in the adventure. I'm a very adventurous person, and I feel like I got to see this play out really intimately. I was at a residency in Nantucket for just shy of a month with 4 other songwriters, and when you're part of a group that's just over that even number, there's always going to be an outlier of some type, and it was I never thought of that. It was really beautiful to see it because I was the outlier, and they were all very stable, balanced artists. Like, they went to bed at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and like woke up at 9 on the dot, and like would drink their coffee and write their songs.
Right.
Like work until noon, and
it's
then
kind of like a
break for lunch.
style.
Yeah, they'd break for lunch, and then they'd go back and maybe go on a walk, but they wouldn't go far from the house. They'd walk in the cranberry bogs around, and they'd come back and write some more, and then dinner and we'd all sit down and enjoy ourselves. And they'd be like, what did you do last night after dinner? And I'd say, well, I went over here, and then I went into town, and then I found the lighthouse, and I laid under the lighthouse for a little while, and then I went over there, and then it was
out to some adventures.
And then it was almost sunrise, so I stayed up for sunrise on the beach, and they were like, what in the world? How did you do? And then, maybe 3, 4, or 5 days of that in a row, and then like I'd wake up one morning, and at breakfast, like 2 songs would come out of me, just like while I'm sitting there eating my breakfast. And that's just how some people are, it's a very much so spontaneous, on the breeze kind of thing. Like all of my songs, in some way, shape, or form, they started in that space. I don't think that anything can really start to finish always happen that way. I think that you can even have all of the lyrics come to you in one sitting, or like lyrics and music, but you're always going to have to go back and polish it, and really be intentional and get a musical director or producer to really like move some things around. But most of what I create is spontaneous and very like divinely inspired. That's why the nature thing is key for me.
So you got to get out there and live a little versus just okay, we're clocking in. Yeah. It's not your style. Clocking out. Yeah. You want to see life, it sounds like. And then these ideas or an inspiration suddenly hits kind of through you being out there.
Yeah. And knowing that, it's kind of like a life hack, I make excuses to go on adventures.
Right. You're gaining fodder for your songs. Yeah, and but the beautiful thing about that perspective of being the outlier was that there was a lot to learn from the stability aspect of creating, of just trying to inspire yourself, and the due diligence of just sitting with it. Did you start to pick up a little bit of that, where you're like, okay, I'm going to keep a schedule for a week, or
and they leaned into my adventures. They realized that I wasn't so crazy. That
they went to the lighthouse.
That some of it was worth seeing. And some of the late nights were worth it, and some of the early mornings were even more worth it.
Yeah, so we gotta have something to write about. Yeah, too. I mean, if you're just going into a room, we get. Let me see. What do you think are some of the next steps for you? Where would you like to go from here?
I think from here, specifically, like as I step out into the world from Louisville, like Louisville is going to be a home for me forever. I think that one day I'll have a house here. that I come to and fro from.
Yeah.
But what's next for me is building a team. Like
Okay.
as an independent artist, I've learned that you can have 100 songs, but you've got to have the producer to help you get there.
Right.
You can have, you know, a nice camera, but you need to have somebody there to take the pictures.
Sure.
You know, and you can't do it all, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the social media team, the booking agent, the manager, like all of that's so important. So I think for me, the next steps are a little bit more internalized. They're organizing. Like, I don't think a lot of artists give themselves the credit to be able to do that on their own. And I'm just going to see if I can. You know, there's a lot more services offered to independent artists than there were in the earlier part of the decade. So
getting the team together. What's the next team member you think would make the biggest difference for you to get to the next place or step?
Probably a tour manager. Honestly.
Tour manager.
Yeah, like in letting that person almost be like a ground floor investor. Like, like we were talking about reinventing the wheel in a business way. Like, there are so many options that we have today that we didn't have before, and I think one of those is like just calling an artist what it is. It's, you know, even though it's me, I still have some separation in the sense that it's like it is a startup company, and if someone wants to invest in that idea with me, you know, I'm open to that. And I think that's how it gets done anymore, is building a team, not just of investors, but of people that want to invest their time into it as well.
I imagine, you know, going from the path you were on to going to music, that must have been a scary jump or leap of faith.
Yeah. Well, where I'm from, nobody really does that. You know, there's no, like, they always say in order to do it, you have to see it. In order to believe that you can do it, you have to see somebody doing it in front of you. And like, there wasn't really that. So it was scary because no one back home really understood what I was doing. Yeah. So it was a constant state of like proving myself before I even knew what I was trying to prove to them. Right. And I think that's what was scary. But once I got to the space, once I got to the place where I had some songs and I was going to be at open mics, you know, because that's how it went for the first year. I don't want anybody to think that you just snap your fingers and you're playing shows. Like I played open mics like they were gigs. Sometimes twice a night, you know, for 3 days a week, 3 days of my week, every week I was at an open mic. And
like I saw comedians do it. And they work out a lot to get those muscles and comfort on stage. I really did. I worked out a lot. Even as a brick mason, I would work all day and then I'd go stay up until the wee hours at these open mics. And it was about a year before I got my first booked gig. And that's what's so funny. Like, people are like, but even with the voice, right, and even with a couple all right songs, like, it still took the year, you know, just like grinding against what felt like insanity. So I think for me, like, the insanity part has become a friend, you know. Yeah, I was going to ask what helped you get through those times when it might not seem like maybe, you know, we can all feel like things aren't going anywhere at times, you know. Yeah, it was the days where it made sense. You know, if 100 days in a row felt like a kick in the head, then like it was like the one day that you showed up and somebody remembered you from the last open mic and was like, oh man, that song made impact. Yeah, and it wasn't so much that I let it feed my ego. It was that it was the gas in the tank to say, like, oh, I'm not, like, yeah, this does make sense because of the impact on the community. And it all goes back to community for me. Growing up, you know, like, I got to a point where I started to see, whenever I would post that I had a show, like, that it was a place for people to come together. And people, you know, that I love, that my community together. And I think it was easy for me to think that whatever I was doing was healthy because I saw how healthy that community was.
and how eclectic and diverse that community was. And it felt like people felt safe, you know? And that's the goal. It's just to create spaces for people to be comfortable being themselves.
Yeah. Since leaving a small town and then coming to Louisville, after some time, have you gone back and done a show?
Yeah, I went back this weekend, actually.
Oh.
It's my first time going back. It was really strange.
What was that like?
It was beautiful. I played in Fayetteville, which is, it's wild that we're talking about climbing. It's where I learned how to climb, and I actually played for the people that taught me how to climb. They didn't even know it was me. I have a beard now, and you know, like I'm 10 years that person's senior.
Right.
That they met, and I got to play for them, and I actually did a thing I never thought I would do. I got asked to come home and play my 10-year reunion, and they paid my rate and supported me as an artist.
That's incredible. As
we go into another winter, you know, as artists, like I couldn't sacrifice the weekend rate, you know.
Right.
And they paid it, and they supported me, and they sat with me through my set. And
this is your high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hurricane High School. Yeah. And that was my first time going home, playing for peers back home in a very long time. Like since I left specifically, and that's one of my goals this year is to go back to West Virginia and play more in West Virginia this year coming. So
I imagine going back, you're not going back as the same person.
No, and it's I'm not going back to live there either, and that's a whole nother dynamic in yourself too. Like knowing that I really truly love that state, and knowing that like I won't be hanging my hat there for anytime soon, you know. Not that I wouldn't love to own a place there one day, but yeah, just trying to reintegrate myself into the community, but not going back to be a part of that. It's a very interesting perspective, but I feel like it's the traveling artist perspective. Like I want to go reintroduce myself to my home state as this, you know, new man that I am. I'm excited to do that this year.
What kind of growth do you think you noticed in yourself as you went back?
I trust myself the way I used to when I was on that rock wall. Yeah, I'm to the point in my career where I don't need to have someone on stage with me to make me feel comfortable on stage. Like I trust myself alone. And that took a long time to get there because I have some amazing music community as well, you know. And
collaborators.
Yeah, exactly. People that just add so much value to my life on and off stage. Yeah. And I love having them there. But I think that that's what I noticed was that I trust my capabilities as a performer more than I ever have.
I noticed a show at the Odeon on YouTube.
Yeah.
You take the audience through a story and an arc with your performance. Is that something you preconceive? You plot that out, or it just is? How does that work out? Where you develop a whole performance? How do you look at that? Like when you're going to do a show, a long show.
It's probably people's most favorite part and least favorite part about me is that it's very hard for me to plan anything.
I'm getting this spontaneous vibe from you, from these adventures to...
Yeah, and it happens in the set, too. For Odeon, I made a set list, and I think I gave it to the band, like, the day before we had the show, you know. But we had rehearsed all the songs, but they just didn't know what order they were going to be in. Some of the band that plays with me on a regular basis, you know, they know that we can have 6 rehearsals of how a song is going to go, and then I'll throw an impromptu, audibles. Instrumental. Yeah, just audibles are always expected with me. And, I think that the arc, for me, comes from the intuition. It's not so much that I love to be this crazy thing that's hard to follow. I'm not, actually trying to be that. I just am genuinely trying to intuitively see what the crowd needs. and where we're going from there.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like you're basically responding to the audience and to create that arc in your performance.
Yeah.
You have to be responsive.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Scott, for this interview. The honesty definitely comes out in your music, and I appreciate you giving me some insight into the community out here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.